Welcome to episode 5 of the Through Married Eyes podcast. Today I have Sherry and JP Paprocki. Welcome, guys.
How are
Thank
you?
you.
Doing good. How are you guys feeling?
Good.
Wonderful.
Great. So, how long have y'all been married?
Coming up on 12 years. May 17th will be 12 years married.
Congratulations. That's next month.
Yes.
Are you prepared?
Of course.
We both did forget it one year though.
At
We
the
did.
same time?
Yes, and both of us just completely
Mhm.
forgot.
Life gets busy, understandable. So, how long was the dating period for you guys?
So we dated for what, like 6 months?
Yeah, I guess. Well, you want to consider the engagement period part of the dating period, or?
So that's like the next question. So you
Okay.
can say like how long the dating period was and then how long the engagement period was.
Yeah, so the dating period lasted 6 months,
Yeah.
and then
And then we got engaged.
for
And then how-
4 years.
4 years, yeah.
We were engaged 4 years.
So how did you meet and how did your relationship start?
So we met through mutual friends. We had mutual friends of each other's, and then that's how we met. Like, I guess that's
At a
that's the first
birthday
time we ever
party.
seen each other. And I don't think we even talked that day, did we? Like, we
No.
just like seen each other in passing, and I kind of knew of him just from friends that of his, and so they would talk about him or whatever, and I kind of knew who he was, but that was that's how we knew of each
I
other.
didn't have a clue who she was until I saw her that day at the birthday party.
And how long after you guys started dating did you know that you wanted to marry each other or at least be together for the rest of your lives?
I knew right away.
Right
Yeah,
away.
Right away.
And what indicated that?
Oh, I could go on forever on this. So, what made it up for me was the fact that no matter where we were at, I was the only person in the room. Nobody else was around. It didn't matter. The building could have been on fire, and she wouldn't matter. She didn't care. She was focused on me, and that was, to me, that was awesome. I was like, this is the one. This is it. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so for me, it was a little bit different. I truly had no desire to get married. Like, that's why we stayed engaged for 4.5 years, was because for me, I was happy and comfortable, content in what was working, and I had a different perspective and outlook on marriage. I was scared to be married. I think everybody that I had been around or seen, their marriage had failed, and so I was like, why try to fix something that's not broken? Let's stay engaged. And he just kept persistent, like, I want to get married, we need to get married. Of course, we had Caden and we were still engaged. We're not married, and so he really wanted to be married, and I was just like, nope, not gonna do it. And I think I had told you this before. I was sleeping one night and I had what I would say at the time I thought was like God gave, come and gave me a message. But I had listened to a service that Brother Herring had done over angels, and he talked about the different types of angels, and he had talked about a messenger angel. And so after hearing that service, I was like, that is exactly what that was. I was sleeping, and as vivid as I could possibly, I just seen it, and it was a big silhouette, and it was white, and it literally came to the bedside where I was sleeping, and it was like, marry him. And it said it multiple times, just it repeated, marry him. And I was like, okay. I grew up in church, so I knew about God, I knew about angels, I knew about, these things. And it didn't scare me. It wasn't anything that, scared me, but I had never had something like that happen to me before. And so I was like, oh my goodness, and we were married very soon after that.
Mm-hmm. Like, she woke up that next morning, she's like, I want to get married now.
I'm like, we need to, like, there's a reason for this.
So that was like the push forward that you needed.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for those who are listening, your relationship, it started off not being in church or anything like that, and then you eventually had come to find truth again. Can you, this is kind of off of the normal questions, but
Sure.
Can you just explain that transition and how you, how dating was whenever it was kind of in the world and then just being together and then being together in church, and how did your relationship change because of that?
I'll let you start on that one.
So I think being, dating in the world and stuff like that, was a lot different than what, I'm seeing. I listen to every one of your podcasts, and I'm inspired. I mean, even as long as we have been married, it's inspiring to see and hear other people's story. And I even have my kids listening to it because I'm like, boys, y'all need to hear this. Y'all need to listen to this, learn from this. And, it's like I've told Taylor, like, if you can pick up one thing out of all of this that improves your marriage or helps you in some way when you get married, you should listen. And so I think dating in the world is much different than, what I see and what I've heard, thus far, and a lot more complicated, a lot harder, because there are so many other, things out there that are distracting or pull your attention, from your marriage, or it just, anything in general. And being in church has helped us as a family, not just our marriage, but helped us all as a family to grow closer to each other, closer to God. Our values have changed completely. What what was once important is not as important anymore as,
It really
so.
closed the gaps on the loose ends of what the world left you with, just the worldly things of going partying and going to the dancing clubs and all that stuff. You have such a feeling the next morning of, what are we doing? Why are we? This is just it's like a feeling of regret or remorse almost. But now, being in church and living for God, and oh my gosh, I wish that.
I think as hectic as our life is still today, there's peace in that. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but I mean, there really is. Like, there's a whole presence of peace that just, is in our lives, in our home, that was not there before.
Yeah, that peace that surpasses all understanding.
Truly.
That's right.
Yep.
And one thing that I want to note, just for those that are listening, is it was actually Sister Sherry here that had given me this whole idea, because one day we were having I don't even know if you remember this, but one day, it was whenever the church was still being renovated, when we were moving to the new building, and we were in a hallway talking, and we were just talking about like relationship stuff in general, and just like our views on it, and kind of things that I've learned over the years and my curiosities. And you were like, man, you should write a book about this.
Absolutely.
And I'd always wanted to write a book, and I hadn't even really thought about, well, what would I want to write about? And whenever you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like I would kind of like that, but I didn't even know like where to start. And then I started brainstorming, and so that's where this whole idea came from. So I can I can thank her for all of this. So what was the best moment of your dating relationship? Or if it wasn't just one moment, what culmination of moments?
All of it, every bit of it. It's just been. It seems like every day it gets better. Every day it is never the same. It's always a constant change.
I think that like the best moments, and so it is like a two-part thing. We talked about this like a little bit, like the best moments and our worst moments all equaled up to being like, the greatest of, that really tied all of us together. I think one of your questions is like the worst. And I think us as a whole trying to blend a family, because he had a child prior to us being together, I as well. And so trying to blend that family together it was tough. It was complicated. One of the things that I reminisced back on was, when Thomas and Brianna were the same exact age. He was the only child, so he obviously did not want another sibling. He was not like, I didn't sign up for this. And then Brianna was like, I definitely don't want another brother, and especially the same age. And so with him being the only child, we had went to one of his plays, and I think his grandparents had brought him some like lifesavers. And I'm telling you, he shared with the entire class, but he refused to give Brianna a lifesaver. And JP, I don't know if he just didn't acknowledge it, or he just wasn't like, whatever, but he did not, hey, you should give him a lifesaver. And I was, or give her that, a lifesaver. And I was like, oh no. So I loaded Brianna up. We went to the store and we just loaded up on this candy. And just to prove a point, I was like, and so I was showing him like this, you should need to learn to share. And of course, JP was like, yeah. And so we had a lot of work to do. And so that was some of our toughest and hardest moments. But in all of that, it
made them the greatest moments.
Yeah. It turned out to be, beautiful. And I mean, obviously all orchestrated by God, because it wasn't us that, was able to do all that. But, I don't know. We've had some good times. I was thinking too, one of the moments when we first got together, my grandma, she she was just who she was. There was nothing that came out of her mouth that it wasn't, she was not going to not say. And she said what was on her mind. And so I was trying to prepare JP, like, you're going to go with me and my grandma, you're going to meet my mom, be prepared. And he was nervous wreck already. And so we get to the house, and she'd set all these tables out around the chair, and he
Chairs
just,
around the table.
yeah, did I say tables around the
Yes,
chairs?
you did.
So the chairs around the table, and he happened to sit in one of them that the top wasn't like, what was it, nailed on or whatever.
Down,
And he thought he broke her chair. He was so embarrassed. He fell out of it. It was a whole scene. And I don't think I'll ever forget that. That was because he was, so nervous already. And it was just,
that probably made it so much worse.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it did. For him, he was like, red.
And I think that she set me up because she knew the chair was broken. I think it was a setup.
Yeah, she was trying to see how you'd react.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. Well, I love how you had said that even at your worst moments, you're able to turn it into something good, and it turned out to be something because you were able to get through it, some of your best moments. So I think that that's so special. So what distinctions between your spouse and past partners, if you had any, let you know that they were different?
Well, like I said, when we first got together, and nobody else mattered. Like, there was never, I didn't have to think, oh my gosh, is she looking at this other guy, or is anybody else catching her attention? It didn't matter to her what was going on. And I knew then that she was different from all the other girls. Like all my past, I knew that she was different because she was focused on what she wanted, and she knew what she wanted. And that was, not to mention she's absolutely gorgeous. So
oh my goodness,
I couldn't pass that up either.
Oh my goodness. So for me, with him, I think he was, and how he was different than my past relationships, is he was just kind, caring, gentle. He listened to what, who I was, the things about me, and like actually genuinely cared about those things. And he was just patient with me, because I was not an easy person to love, so for me, I think that was what really got me.
And how did you prepare for marriage, being in that long-term committed relationship, before meeting your spouse, if at all? And if you did that actually work for you?
As in, how did we prepare during the 4 years of engagement?
Well, even before you met your spouse, like,
there was no planning.
Yeah.
We shot from the hip on that one, didn't we?
Yeah, that was just a ta-da.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. Just in the moment decision.
Absolutely.
So do you think that if you were to do it again and you were to have time to prepare, do you think that would change your outcome at all?
Yeah, I would say yes. For me, it probably would. I think I needed to grow up some and like learn a lot more about myself, who I was, what I wanted, how to overcome some of the struggles that I had personally been through. And I think that's a big reason why I did not want to be married. And so if I could, go back now, do some self-reflecting, and kind of focus more on myself, learn a little bit more about myself, it probably would have made life easier for him. And, so, I'm not a horrible person, but I was hard to love. I wanted to push him away. I was like, I can do this by myself. I don't need a man. Like, and that was my perspective on everything. And I'm still very strong-willed, strong-minded. And even my mom was like, good luck. When he asked my mom, like, can I marry her? She was like, good luck.
I asked for permission. I said, Mama, I'd like to, ask for permission to marry your daughter. And she kind of looked at me and she said, good luck. I said, so is that a blessing? Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think if, I could go back, I'd probably do some of that different.
And how did your daily walk with God affect your relationship from the very beginning to now? And even if you didn't have a walk with God in the beginning, how did integrating that into your individual life affect your relationship?
So when we first got together, I was going to church at Second Baptist, and I wasn't involved in the church by any means. I just went to church, and I mean I enjoyed going there. We would just go on Sundays, but she would come to church with me every once in a while. The first couple weeks, I guess about the first month we got together, and then obviously that changed when we kind of started partying a little bit more and staying out too late on Sunday nights or Saturday nights and not going to church anymore. And then we went, probably 4 or 5 years before we found church again at another little Baptist church, and neither one of us. I kind of liked it. It was old. It had an old soul feel to it. She didn't like it. She's like, I'm falling asleep in here, so we got to find something different. And then we just kind of stepped away completely until COVID hit.
Yeah. So I grew up in church, and so, I knew about oneness, and, he had grew up Catholic, and we had gone to a couple of churches together, and I had told him before, he really liked one of the churches, and I was just like, this is not it. Like, I mean, I need a church where I can just go throw myself on the altar and be like, Lord, I need something. I need you. I need to feel your presence. And I, growing up in church, and I was like, if you ever just step foot in a Pentecostal church and you feel God, you're going to be like, I'm never looking back. And, yeah, so that is really, I mean, it's helped our relationship a lot. We've grown together. We've learned a lot together. Our walk with God and getting into church and finding truth and oneness again, for me, has helped tremendously. Like, it has, I think, as like our whole family, like I said before, and I mentioned, like, it just brings peace in our home, peace in our lives. And it's grown. I mean, we've grown together as a couple. This is something we've never had, done before. We've done a lot of other things together, but we haven't, been down this path together, and it has helped us grow. They talk about couples that pray together and stuff like that. We'll read our Bible, sometimes together. We go in the church every morning before we go to work, and we pray. And so I don't know. I mean, I really think that it has overall helped us, not just in our marriage, but
and just in the short 3 years of doing this, I don't know how we ever made it without it. Honestly, it's made such a difference in our life.
Yeah.
To see it in the kids, to see it in my grandchildren, this is the only way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going on to a couple more lighter, fun questions, I wanted to ask, what were some of the first things you noticed about your spouse whenever you were talking to them and just first met them, even if it's physical characteristics, personality, whatever it may be? What were some of the first things that you noticed?
Well, obviously, I thought he was super handsome, but I think this is hilarious, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I know he's probably like, please don't. So when I first, we saw each other at the birthday party, but when I first found interest in him, wow, I was single and he was single.
During the hurricane. It was during Hurricane Ike.
No, we didn't have electricity. No one had. We all looked a hot mess, right?
The recovery process of Hurricane Ike.
And he shows up one night, and I'm over at my friend's house, and he shows up, and he is in a cowboy hat, a cutoff shirt, some shorts, and some boots. And I was just like, wow, he's cute, And he's like, what did you say? You're like, the trash on the trash. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Anyways, I was like, oh my goodness, that's my kind of guy, So
I noticed her eyes instantly, and that was it. Because you can just see all the way through every bit of her. She tells her whole story through her eyes instantly, and that was it. I was like, wow.
So if you had to describe your spouse in a few words, 3 words max, what would those words be?
You're smart, you're beautiful.
No, you're not Zoe. You're not Zoe.
I tell our dog this. I always tell her every night. I'm like, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're strong. No, so for him, I think he's strong, he's smart, he's very intelligent, and he's genuine. genuine.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to borrow that one from you, but I was gonna say the first one is you're grounded. You're very grounded.
Oh, I thought you meant like I was in trouble. I was like, what?
No. You're a very grounded person.
Very grounded.
You're a real one. You're as real as it gets. There's no one way this way or one day have this person. It's you get what you see, and that's amazing and loving. You have a very pure loving heart. You love everything and every person.
That's so sweet.
And what Bible passage or Bible verse reminds you of your marriage?
I'm gonna go first because I think she's gonna try to steal it. She's looking right now. She's looking. I saw when she screenshot that last night. I was like, "You did not."
So, like I said, I had to do a little research on this one because I had never thought about this. I was like, "That's a good one. I need to look. I need to see." And so I did a little research. So, and I screenshot him from his phone. So, guys, if he says what I'm gonna say, it's because he stole it from me. So.
Well, now I have to go down a different route.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So mine is Ecclesiastes 4:12, and it says, "Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, and a cord of three strands is not quickly broken." And I like that because I 100% agree with that. JP and I have had a good marriage. God has blessed us with a good marriage. I feel like a strong marriage. Not to brag or anything, but it's been easy. It's been fun. And I think since coming to church and coming to know God
and tying that third line in,
like it's, and so when I read that last night, I was like, that's it. I feel like it really sealed the deal, by bringing God into this marriage and into this family. And so I was like, I love it. It's mine. So nobody else can take it from this point forward.
So I guess I'll just have to revert back to where I was. I don't even know. I think it's First Kings when Elisha is scared and he's like, where are we going to get our help? And it's coming from the hill. So if you ever feel like you're in a bind, just know that God's got our back. He's bringing us. He's got our back. The help is coming from the hills. We're there.
Yeah, absolutely. How would you say that your upbringings shaped your views of dating and marriage? Your childhoods, how your parents acted, how did those shape your views?
So, my parents are actually celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary today.
Wow. Congratulations to them.
50
For
years
sure.
Married today. I always knew as a young child, even watching my parents, when they would fight and argue, and then when they'd have their good days and their bad days, I always knew that that's what I wanted. I wanted to be married, and I wanted to be married forever. That was it. I was like, I want to get married. I want to be married forever. And Sherry is my second marriage. My first marriage didn't last. And of course, I learned from some mistakes, but that definitely set the precedence for me. And I knew that when I met her, that this is what marriage should be. And that's why I was like, I know immediately, without a shadow of a doubt, that's who I'm going to marry, and that's who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And the best part about it is she's my best friend.
Yeah, so for me, my upbringing and things were not like him. Obviously, I came from a broken home. My mom had been married a couple of times before, and I think that's kind of why I didn't want to be married. I had a previous child, children or whatever, and I never got married. I didn't want to be married to them. I just didn't want to be married. And I think a lot of how I was brought up and the things that I had seen my mom go through and, my dad, and then just the different relationships that she had been in, you just pushed that whole idea out of my head. I didn't want anything to do with that. So it was a lot different for me, and our lifestyle, like how he grew up and how I grew up, was completely different. And so yeah, it definitely affected it.
So with you having kids prior to him, and then you having a marriage before her,
I had a child before as well.
Mm-hmm. So how did that affect your marriage as well? And I guess asking because y'all are also the first couple that I've interviewed where one person has a previous marriage, and then both of you guys had children beforehand. So I know that would
a whole new level of dynamics.
Yeah, a whole new dynamic.
Blending was tough. It was tough, no doubt. There were days where you think this is going to be so easy. It's going to be like just smooth as silk.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's days like, what did we do?
Yeah.
This isn't going to work.
I mean, he had his own parenting views because obviously, I mean, he raised his son. He had custody of his son, and so he was a bachelor trying to raise a kid, a guy trying to raise a kid, and then of course I'm a mom, and we had our own different parenting views and how we raised our children, and then obviously the children were not, always, receptive either to who I was trying to come into, his life and how he, who he was trying to come into their life. And then they didn't, wasn't necessarily that they wanted each other either. And so it was a challenge. It was challenging. It was difficult, but I mean, through it all, it, turned into a beautiful love story. And I mean, we love our family, and I think it all worked out.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I 100% know that God's hand was in it from the get go. And, I know people are probably like, oh, she's crazy. She did not see an angel. I'm telling you, like when I would say God was in it, he was in it, because there's no other explanation as to why it worked, why it works, why it has came easy for both of us. But God is good.
Yeah. And because y'all had such different upbringings, how was it blending those traditions that you were used to together? Because there is the part of blending the family, but then there's also you saying, well, I grew up with these family traditions and you grew up with these family traditions. What traditions are we going to have together? What are we going to establish? How was that process?
So my family was very, like, we just kind of, you were more of a you do your own thing type. We would have a Christmas, if it was Christmas, we gathered then. But like even now, we don't. If we talk, we'll talk once a week or something like that. We don't communicate all the time every day, and that's different for me
as opposed to
for
my
her
family,
as opposed to her family, because they talk all the time, like every day. And that was totally, like, when we first got together, I was like, oh my gosh, y'all just talked yesterday. What are you talking about today? There's not that much has happened since y'all went to bed last night to when you woke up. But that's the difference in her family versus mine. And then if you go back to where she said that if she could have done something different to make it, that she was hard to love, or she feels like she was hard to love. That was the resistance, I guess, of the marriage thing, that I had to just kind of just keep waiting, be patient, and hold on.
Yeah, I agree with him. It was I agree with him in what he said. That's where we were different. How he was brought up, how I was brought up, and blending our family like that, where he was just like, well, I mean, we don't have to do everything together, right? And I'm like, no, we do, like, so.
So, who were your mentors during the dating period, if you had any at all? And how did they shape your outcome? If you didn't have mentors during the dating period, how do you think that you would have benefited from one?
Oh, so we did not.
No.
But I wish we would have. I definitely think that it would have been a benefit. And I'm telling you now, I've already got my eyes on a few people for my boys. Like, I love Brother Isaac. He is a praying man. And I'm like, when it comes time, I hope that, that they can have good mentors. But I think it would have been really good for both of us, especially trying to blend a family. If anybody's ever gone through that, and helped us, get through some of those hurdles and what it's like, or had experience in that, could have gave us some pro tips, on doing that to make life a little bit easier for us. But yeah, we didn't have any, but I definitely wish we would have, and I think it would have benefited a lot.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So, what role has in-laws played in your marriage, and how has it affected it, whether positively or negatively?
So, like he kind of mentioned earlier with his family and how they grew up, and not being as close and things like that. His parents, I love them to death. They're amazing people, like I said, and I look up to them for 50 years of marriage. That's an accomplishment. That is a testimony, and especially in today's age. But they were not super close, and so my mom was always very much involved with our children all the time. And it wasn't just on holidays. She was there 24/7 and involved, and his parents were not so involved. And so there was many times that him and I would have disagreements or arguments over that, because I was just like, it's, they need to be involved. They need to, have things to do with our kids. It's not just on Christmas. It's not fair to the kids. And so we would have a lot of disagreements with that. But I think, as we got older and the kids grew and things like that, it became one of those things it just became not an issue. It was just, it is what it is. That's who they are. We love them for it. And, they're great grandparents. They are, it was just, them not being as involved as I would have liked, in the beginning caused some problems.
And then like she said, expecting them to be involved so much, I was almost like, I didn't want to say I was completely okay with it, but it didn't really, I wasn't losing sleep over it because that's how I was used to being. But then, like with her mom and being there all the time, I was like, okay, this is a whole new adjustment for me. Like I just saw you last weekend, and I wasn't used to that. But no, I'm so grateful for her. So grateful for her. She is an absolute blessing, and it worked.
That's awesome. So, how has your financial situation over time affected your relationship?
So this is a good question. And as long as we've been together, it's really good. So when JP and I first got together, I don't even know what the conversation was, but we had got to talking, and I was just like, I made the comment. I was like, I will live with you in a cardboard box under a bridge. Like things like materialistic, because I grew up in a home where we didn't have money. We weren't, we didn't have the finer things in life. We didn't go out to eat a lot after church, things like that, because we just didn't have the funds to do it. And so for me, materialistic things were not important. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. They weren't as important to me. And so I always told him that. And we have gone, when I got pregnant with Caden, for my birthday, I was craving pancakes, I think. Mm-hmm. And we literally overdrew our checking account to make pancakes for me for my birthday while I was pregnant. And, so we, have kind of gone through all the different, whatever. But as we got older, I knew, for me, I wanted a different lifestyle for my kids than what I had. And not that it was horrible. I think there's something to be appreciated by not growing up with money. It builds character, and it, shapes you into who you are. But I wanted a different lifestyle for my kids. And so, saving is a big thing for me. There's times, I think we all do it, where we spend money, because you want something, or whatever, and you overspend here or there. But for me, saving is very, very important. I don't like to spend money just to spend money, because I do want to leave our children an inheritance. I want, because my family would not have that. But, JP has grown up completely, like his whole lifestyle was a lot different than mine. He came from a family who did have money, and they did take trips and things like that. So, but growing together, we just kind of put our money together, and
we have always both been on the same
page,
the same, if we can't pay cash for it, we don't need to buy it. Try to stay out of debt as much as possible. Neither one of us wanted to get in debt, and it's been good.
So we've been through all of it, where we had no money to, being able to put money back in savings. But I definitely think that it is important to be able to be on the same page with that, because, statistically proven, like, a lot of marriages end because of finances and stuff like that. And so I think it's important to be on the same page with your spouse. And,
you can't have one trying to save while the other's spending as fast as the other one's trying to save it. So
yeah, it won't work out that way.
Communication on financials is key.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And is that something that you discussed together when you were dating before you got more serious, or did that kind of just come along later?
No, I think it kind of happened on the front side, because I was single and I didn't have anybody to worry about, and I just did what I wanted with my money. And then when we first got together, she's like, well, you spend a lot of money on a lot of useless stuff. So I was like, okay, she's pretty tight with her money. Let's figure this out. Let's see where we
we
are
had
with
4
this.
kids too, so it
Yeah,
was.
I was a single man with one child, and then all of a sudden it was 5 of us.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
So
That
we
multiplied
kind of
pretty quick.
Yeah, we needed to buckle down
Grocery
quickly.
bill
And
just went up exponentially. It's time to really focus on how this money works.
Mhm.
So we sat down together and came up with where we're wasting money and where we need to buckle down and make it happen. And from there on, it's just been.
Yeah, we were able to put, we had a certain dollar amount that we put in our savings, and we, from that point forward, was like, we're not going under that dollar amount.
That was our new
like,
zero.
That was, if you're at that point, you are broke. And so, we've gone through it all. Like I said, we started out with really nothing, overdrawing checking accounts to have pancakes, and then God is blessed. And then, right before we started church, COVID hit, and JP lost his job. He had been in the oil industry his entire life, and so when he lost his job, he's like, oh man, this, it'll be all right. I'll find a job rather, quickly. And what was it, 4 months went by, and I mean, our whole life changed. We went from, living a comfortable life, and we didn't have an income. I didn't work at the time, and so we didn't have an income. And
watching that new zero
start to dwindle and
get real close real fast, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, something's got to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a whole story in itself, how God, really had us. We had, like I said, I'd been listening kind of online, and God had worked all of that out. I mean, we prayed and prayed, and JP had never really dealt with like depression or anything like that before. But as the months started going by and we started seeing our savings, start to go down, JP started to kind of like, go into like, and I think it's just a man thing where, you feel like you need to be the provider of the home. You need to take care. And he just was not feeling that, like he was able to provide. And so I think the stress and worry started to weigh on him. And just a quick backstory, he had called a gentleman for about a job, and he's like, yeah, I'll come in for an interview, and he went in, and he talked to the guy one day, and he was like, yeah, I'm fixing to go out of town or whatever, but I'll call you back in for another interview to come meet the other, owners or whatever at the company. And JP was like, okay, no problem. And then one morning we were sleeping in late. Obviously we didn't have anything to do. We didn't have to get up early for anything. And his phone started ringing super early, and he's like, who's calling? And the guy called, and he was like, hey, can you be here in like 30 minutes? And JP was like, yeah. I mean, we didn't expect it, because obviously this dude was supposed to be going out of town. And JP flies there, gets there, and he walks in, and he tells him, he's like, I don't know if you believe in God or not. He was like, but I was getting ready this morning, and I just felt like I needed to have you come down today. And I was like, oh, I was just like, thank you, Jesus. And so I think they offered you a job that day, was it? Yeah, that day.
Yeah.
And
they didn't have an opening.
Yeah, they did not have an opening for the position that he was, applying for, and they hired him on the spot. And you were there 2 weeks and moved right up into that position. That there was an opening that came available, and he moved right into that position within like 2 weeks. And I mean, I'm telling you, just God has blessed and blessed and blessed. But finances is a big thing. So
yeah, well, it's very obvious that God has not only done a lot, but he always does way better than we can ever do.
Absolutely.
And yes. I bet that you can probably confidently say that you're a lot better off in the position that you are now with your job than if you were to have stayed with the previous company.
1,000,000 times over.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what seemed like a really big trial, it was a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely.
And I love how that happens. It reminds me of the verse whenever it's in the story of Joseph, where Joseph is talking to his brothers. He says, what you meant for evil, God turned for good.
And he absolutely has.
So how would you organize the hierarchy of priorities in your life? So if it were the top 5 things that you prioritize in your life, how do you go one by one down that list?
God is going to be first.
Yeah.
God and spending time at the church is going to be the first thing for me and for her. I can confidently say we agree on that.
Mm-hmm. That wasn't always a story with us, obviously, before getting into church, but now that we're in it, I'm telling you, that's the only thing that matters to us, that's important to us. I know it's, I don't know. I can't get enough of it. I've said it so many times. I wish we would have, gotten church sooner. I wish we could have raised our kids all in church, and I don't think that will ever change. I will always feel that way. I wish I would have come sooner. So now I'm just like trying to get as much as I possibly can. I'm like, Lord, I don't know how many days I got left, but I want to get every bit of it that I can. So yes, I think God comes first, and then Family's we've said that many times, is so important to me. Yeah.
And then of course between our family, I'm going to say fishing is number 3.
Lord.
Yeah, we have a big fisher here. You and
all of us. She's the best fisherman in the family.
We do love
all
to
the big
fish.
fish.
Yes.
Yeah, going to competitions and everything. Man,
the boys love to fish, and I enjoy fishing with them. So yeah. Is fishing seriously number 3?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Why
wouldn't you know?
It very seriously.
Why
God
wouldn't
does
it be?
come
I mean,
first. But
that fills in with family time because we do it as a family.
that is true.
Yeah.
He has a point.
I don't know. I mean, we love to travel. I love to travel and see the world. That's something that I didn't get to do as a kid, and JP got to see the world with his family, plus with work. He's seen a lot of it. And so for me, I love to travel. I like to see the world. I like to be outdoors doing things. So that's important to me.
So how would you say that you handle arguments and disagreements? And it also kind of flows into the next question, which is, how has forgiveness played a role in your marriage?
So
we're both extremely stubborn and hard-headed. Like, that was the one thing that we both noticed about each other right away. And it was a matter of I had to choose my battles with her if I wanted to be happy, because she's going to win at all costs. So
listen, I've really struggled with the submissive part. I really have. And I still need a lot of help, probably a lot of Bible studies over this, like, because I am so headstrong. And again, I think it all plays back to my growing up, my upbringing, the trials and tribulations I was going through as a child, and have, things that I've experienced in my lifetime. But I mean, we have our fair share of spats or whatever, but like I said before, our marriage has come easy. It has been, it's been easy. It's been fun.
We really haven't. I couldn't tell you the last like big knockdown, drag out style. We don't fight. It's just.
I mean, we have disagreements,
it works.
And then we're just
works.
like, it is what it is, And I think, I told you, I was like, I can't even admit this because I heard your last podcast and y'all were talking about people that have a hard time saying sorry. But when JP and I got together, I was like, it was hard for me to say sorry. I don't know why those words were so hard to come out of my mouth. But even when I was wrong, I was just like, I'd rather bite my tongue in half than have to say I'm sorry to him. And, over time, obviously that's changed. But I don't know. We just get through it. I mean, there's never been a night that I guess starting out, we just like, if it's not something we're not going to sleep away from each other. We're not going to be away from each other. I'm not leaving this house. You're not leaving this house. We will work it out one way or the other.
We try not to even go to bed mad at each other.
Yeah.
Resolve it before you go to bed.
Yeah.
There's
I mean, we have our moments, but and even like too, like if JP and I were in a disagreement, we're not going to broadcast it to the entire world. You would not even know. We'd walk in this house with smiles on our face. Everybody would have a great time. And then, we would carry on, afterwards. But
and like if there's something that I'm super passionate about, that I just am dead set that I need to get my way, I'll stand my ground. And she'll 99% of the time, she's like, all right, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'll listen to her and I'll analyze, like, we're fighting over just whatever.
He picks and chooses his battles.
Whatever.
But when he said, when he stands his ground and is like very firm, like, this is it, I'm like, okay. Like, because most of the other times he's like, okay, it is what it is. But if he's being firm about something, I'm like, oh, okay. I know I need to be quiet. So, yeah.
So whenever you do have those disagreements, whenever they do happen, do you find it easier to kind of in the moment, whenever you're really upset about it or you're kind of just like peeved, do you find it easier to step away for a minute and be able to think about it, or just handle it head on right in the moment?
We just handle it.
Yeah. And I have a hard time, if it's something I'm super dead set on, even if it's resolved and we agree, I'm like, I will still want to bring it up again. Like, but she's like, it's done.
Yeah.
We've agreed it, but let's leave it alone. I'm like, but because she's very quick with her words,
Mm-hmm.
and she'll spout off this whole statement, and I'm like, man, the fight's over, but I was gonna say this and this. I need to have cliff notes before we go into an argument because I just can't process fast enough sometimes. So I want to bring it back up, and she's like, "No, it's over and done." And I'm like, "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I agree. Let's squash it and be done."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
So I guess like kind of what you were talking about earlier, how because a lot of how you grew up and everything, how you were conditioned, it was hard for you to say sorry. So this kind of flows into the next question, which is, what are some unhealthy habits that you had to break in order to have a successful dating life, engaged, marriage, all of that? What are some of those habits that you realized in yourself that, hey, I can't have this anymore if I want this relationship to succeed or just us to be happy in general?
So I held on to a lot of stuff that had happened with me during my childhood, just different things that I had went through, and I can't tell you how long JP and I were married before some of it even came out. Like before, I was just upfront and honest. Like I kept a lot of that stuff in, and I think you know all of that like affected it affected us. Like he didn't know why I was the way I was or why I reacted the way I reacted to certain things, because I didn't come out and just like upfront and honest and say, hey, this is things that I've gone through. This is, traumatic experiences that I've experienced. And so I think that all played a role in who, like some of the things that I dealt with. And so a lot of not being able to say I'm sorry or, things like that.
so I grew up in a yelling household, and that's something that even to this day I'm still working on every single day.
Yeah, that's been that's definitely been a struggle in our house, because even though I didn't have the best upbringing, my mom didn't raise us in a house that was like arguing or like yelling and stuff at us. And so JP was, and so that's been one of probably our toughest challenges, and like some of the things that we still spat about is because of that. It's just, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I just feel like you can handle
I don't like it
situations
either.
calmly and talk to people and still get the same results, or even better, because not everybody reacts well to, being yelled at.
Yeah.
Many people don't.
And those habits, whenever you're trying to break them and build new, better ones, how do you go about that? Like, what are the practices that you put in place to try to safeguard against it happening again or as often?
Like with me, if I feel like I'm reaching a point where I'm about to like start yelling, I will just look at her and be like, I need you to, it's in your court now. I need you to handle this. I need you to address this. Or
I will step in and say,
she'll step
you need
in,
to step
or I'll
out and
walk
let
away. Just completely walk away from the situation altogether until.
And we're still trying to juggle that, because he is the head of our house. And if I'm having to ask him to step away, I don't want, the kids to think like, oh, he's not able to handle this situation. And so mom's here and what he says doesn't really go. I don't want that. I want him, but I need him to handle it, in a little loving way.
So, how would you say that boundaries from the beginning to now impacted your relationship? And I know whenever we talk about boundaries, a lot of people immediately go to the physical, but even just emotional boundaries.
So in the beginning with JP and I, with the boundaries that we had set, for each other on, we didn't talk to, we didn't have other people. Like I didn't have guy friends and girlfriend, and he didn't have girlfriends and stuff like that. That text, we just kind of, it was us. You didn't need all the extras, because I feel like that can, be a distraction, or it could lead to something else. And so there was those boundaries that were set in place from the beginning.
But we both had the same view on that. There was no like, oh, you have to quit talking to this person while I keep talking. No, we clearly agreed upon that early.
Yeah, I mean, we had an incident. And I think that's what happened, was we had an incident with one of his exes that was continuing to reach out to him, and And I was like, no, it's got to stop. Like you need to put a stop to this. And so he did. He right there on the phone while I was sitting there was like, listen, we're together. We're going to get married. You need to stop calling me. Mm-hmm. And so that was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as far as like you said, emotional boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Like emotional, relational, like any kind of boundaries that you put up, like the standards in your relationship, why they were there, and what benefit they brought to you.
So when JP and I first got together, and if this is not what you're talking about as far as boundaries, like, so when JP and I first got together, of course he was a bachelor, and so there was he had a lot of pinups in his garage and things like that. He had magazines and things like that, and I was very upfront and honest with him from the get-go. I was like, look, I don't look like any of those girls, and if that's what is that what you're attracted to, then I'm not going to be the one for you, because I don't look like that, like. And so I told him right away, like, I'm not comfortable with that. And he had, some friend groups or guys and stuff like that would text, and the things that they would text was just inappropriate. And I wasn't comfortable with it because I think as a woman, I don't think, you can't compete with that. And so for me,
I told you she thinks faster than me, and I'm now clicking into all of this.
And I think for me, like it just made me feel like less as a person. Like, if he's attracted to that, I don't look like that, then he's not attracted to me. And so it made me feel a way. And so I brought it to his attention, and he was like, not a problem. Like instantly
I cut that out instantly.
Yeah, we never had I don't even think we had another conversation.
Until she said something about it. I was like, I didn't know that was even an issue. So when all that was brought up, I was like, absolute, that's gone. Let's get rid of that right now. And I texted the guys in the group, drop me out of this.
Yeah. And we never had to bring it up again. It was just something. And that's, one of the things that I love about him is that no matter what, if it was made me uncomfortable, he always was like, no, not a problem. If what you want, what you need, I'm there for, I'll do. And then I think one other thing I had asked him, he was accustomed to drinking like a beer or two every night when he would get home from work. And I grew up in a home where my whole family dealt with alcoholism and things like that. My dad, my mom even struggled with it at one point, my grandma, even my brother. And so I was just like, no, I don't want to be in a home like that. I don't want to raise my children in a home like that. So even though you see it as it's not a big deal, you're not getting drunk every day, you're just coming home and drinking a couple of beers. For me, I was like, no, that's not something I want for myself or my kids. And again, he dropped it right away. It was never an argument. It was just me telling him, this is, I can't do this. And
we were always open with our communication, and that was,
yeah. So those are the only two things I could really, know, and then that was it.
Yeah. I know standards like that, like how you're talking about how it's like, I'm not going to be texting other guys, and you're not going to be texting other girls, and what we had just talked about. Just for the sake of people who might be listening that don't see the severity of that, could you just kind of explain where you're coming from and like why that's something that's so important? Because some people, they're like, oh, well, it's just a friend, or it's just somebody that, it's just a conversation. It doesn't mean that much. So why is it so important to you, and how can you communicate that to other people who may not be able to understand?
I think for me, it's just, I think it leaves the door open for something else to happen, where the conversation is just at first joking, or, and then it becomes flirtatious, and it turns, because. So
say you get in an argument, and the friend that's texting is like, hey, why are you bland in your text today? What's wrong? And before you know it, you're spilling your relationship argument upon that one who's like, oh, let me comfort you. And it opens the door to things that you may not be looking for to happen, if you follow what I'm saying, but could happen. And then that would affect your relationship, all because you just replied back in a bland.
And I just never want to leave the any room for doubt. You know what I mean? Like if he ever looked at a text message or, a conversation and was like, hey, what was that? That was a little, no, there's no need for that. And even like on my Facebook, my, anything that I have, I don't hardly get on social media too much, but I don't have, random guys or,
that was a boundary that
even,
we had.
even married men that go, like we go to church with and stuff like that. I won't send friend requests just because I have respect for my own husband, out of respect for them. I just don't, I don't want to leave any room for anybody to doubt or to think or whatever, and I think it's important that you do kind of set boundaries like that in a relationship or even in a new, marriage, things like that, because your intentions may be pure, but theirs may not be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to accompany that, it's not a boundary, I guess, but it's an agreement.
Mm-hmm. Out of respect for each other.
Yeah, out of respect for that, no matter what, at any given moment, my phone's her phone's my phone. There's
mm-hmm.
no, you can't look at my phone. It's that just causes suspicion, which then stirs and invites so many other things. Mm-hmm. It's just best to be open and respect the boundaries. And
yeah, absolutely. So on to our final question, which is what this whole book and podcast is about, is what advice would you give to those who are single and serious about having a successful future marriage?
First and foremost, put God first in it. Keep God in the center of it. Without God, it's going to be a short-lived operation. It's destined for failure without God. Mm-hmm. Second, find your best friend. If it's not your best friend, then it's not going to be any fun. You got to be able to be with somebody that makes you laugh, smile, that you long to be with. Like even right now, after being together for, golly, I don't know, forever, I still get butterflies. I still look forward to seeing her every day. I still can't wait for the Saturday when she gets done with taxis and I can take her fishing. We do everything together. We fish together. We hunt together. We pray together. We do everything together. And that's because she is my best friend. My boys asked me the other day, like, Dad, who's your best friend? In the whole world, who's your best friend? I was like, you already know it's Mom. They're like, not even me? I said, y'all are my boys, but Mom is my best friend. And that's all there is to it. So marry your best friend.
Yeah. I think, obviously, God is foremost and should always be number one, because I definitely think that if you have God in your marriage and you put him at the center of it, no matter what you go through, you will get through it. And kind of to piggyback off of him on, just marrying your best friend, find that person that you can do everything with. And, like I've said before, we work so well together. Not only is it a marriage, it's a partnership. I mean, we do everything with each other. JP has never been scared to get in the kitchen and help me. He is not scared to help clean the house. And if he's outside working, I'm right there beside him. Like, find someone that will do, whatever. They're happy doing what you're doing, and you're happy doing what they're doing. And we spend all the time, all of our time together. It's not many nights since we've been married this long that we've actually had to, be away from each other. And I tell the boys all the time too, now that, they're getting older, and especially Taylor, I even tell him, you need to start working on yourself now to be the man that you want, what you need to be in order to be, in a relationship with someone. Be, strong in your faith, be strong in your walk with God, have a strong prayer walk, so that way you are ready for whatever young lady you're going to, to be with. And, I think, obviously, like I said, putting God first, putting church first, and focusing on yourself, focus on who you are, learning who you are, the things that you like. And, you had mentioned too, some of the things that, you brought up, like I tell the boys all the time, write out some of the things that you really want in a person. And if they can't get those five, if it's 5 things, if they can't meet all 5 of those, then, maybe that's not the person for you. Don't be so quick to be like, oh my goodness, I have this person talking to me or whatever. And, just jump headfirst into it because you got the butterflies and all that. Really find out who that person is, because, when you seal the deal and especially for like the boys, I tell them, you're the head of the house, you're the provider. and you need to be make sure your wife is on the same page as you are.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all, because once you're in a marriage, if y'all are not on the same page, you're going to be a miserable soul for a long time.
And they say that there's somebody out there for everybody, and when you find the right one that, like she said, that ticks off all the boxes, there's no denying you will know instantly.
Mm-hmm.
It will be as clear as a bright light in a dark room.
And it'll be easy. I think it'll come
everything
easy.
is easy.
Yeah.
It's just easy. It will work.
I think if you're down each other's throat every single day and you can't trust that person, and those are some red flags that are really going off, and y'all are just not on the same page on a lot of things, then, despite the fact that you're emotionally invested, you probably need to step back a little bit and take some time and, reflect on what's really going on there. Because I definitely think that if you're in the right relationship, it should flow pretty easy.
Yeah.
So don't jump into anything too fast.
Well, thank you guys so much. This concludes our interview. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being willing to be a part of this. And we will talk to you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.